third-person action-adventure games. Linear traversal, hit-or-miss puzzles, strong combat, collectibles, an endless map covered in towers to climb. I'll be honest that for me, this little clique of games are the best it gets in gaming. Maybe something I picked up from growing up on Gears of War, Lego The Hobbit, and Darksiders 2. But for some reason these games tend to pick up a lot of flack. Well, specifically the games of the style under the PlayStation banner. I kinda get it. When every heavy hitter exclusive is an open world, action-adventure, third-person story-driven game, I can see the comparisons. But I think this take is so wrong for so many reasons. The first being that none of these games have that much in common. Yes, Ghost of Tsushima and God of War are both third-person and feature loadout-based combat systems, but they're so different in actuality. One has this focus on stealth, precise strikes, exploration, and duels. The other is much more focused on the character breakdown, simple puzzles, and massive set pieces. Kratos is much more of a rock band with a small selection of instruments that make for a frantic melody, where Jin feels like an elegant orchestra of dozens of tools and fast strikes to pick off the enemy one by one like a samurai Batman. Even their other games, such as Spider-Man and The Last of Us, like God of War, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man is focused on set pieces, massive battles, and high-octane fights broken up by some horrific puzzles, and micro-stealth sections resembling the Arkham games, fulfilling the superhero power fantasy. Also, to go along with Spider-Man and God of War, I never got the hate for QuickTime events. I get that it's an easy way to pull off a cinematic event and it's very style over substance, but I think this is better than just a totally pre-rendered cutscene. In my opinion, the way that this works in God of War, or like how in Wolfenstein BJ's health remains on screen even in cinematics, helps to ground the story and keep you in the boots of the character, rather than being pulled out for an animated movie that you're not involved in at all, which does happen quite a bit. Where in the complete opposite direction of Spider-Man though, The Last of Us feels like a struggle. You're always out of ammo, low on supplies, desperately trying to get out of the way of enemies as Joel feels like a glass cannon, more often than not, running and gunning when you can or using bricks, bottles, and old broken 2x4s to beat people and zombies over the head. Now this isn't a sole defense of PlayStation. All action-adventure games are a favorite for me. Star Wars Survivor was awesome. A light sprinkling of Soulsborne-style gameplay with the massive worlds and puzzles you'd expect a Jedi to accomplish. The sound effects combined with intense saber fighting can find a messy balance between a more perfect Force Unleashed and total BS Souls nonsense. Mad Max, featuring a twinge of desperation in the Arkham formula. A car that's always on the verge of falling apart, and Max himself struggling by the end of a very long string of fights, holding on to what limited ammo you have, flying through dust tornadoes, battling enemies in dark tunnels over little bits of scrap, across the roads and in their own bases. And do I need to explain what makes the Arkham games so good? These games are revered for a reason, giving birth to a new style of gameplay copied in a number of the examples within this very video. And of course the Xbox flavor of action-adventure is fantastic. Halo Infinite is the only Halo game I finished besides Halo 2, and I had lots of fun with it. As someone who loves Titanfall 2, the grapple and mauler combo is one that I really adore. Gears of War is obviously a series I've equally loved and hated for years now. I can get behind the complaints of walk into a room with convenient waist-high cover, kill, and then repeat, and I have my own issues with the writing, but even still, sometimes the atmosphere and the mindless call of squishy monsters just scratches something in my brain. Senua's Saga is a fantastic experience of sight and sound, truly pushing you into an alternate dimension, and I cannot wait for Hellblade 2 in just a month. Combat that feels like it stretches you thin. Senua and her enemies beating one another into a bloody mess as you both take damage, and it's reflected in how you fight. A Plague Tale, both Innocence and Requiem, are wonderful little stories that mix stealth with limited combat, on top of unique interactions with the light mechanics, the hordes of rats, and other companions you meet along the way. Like Stranger Things but in medieval France, these two games were a blast for me to play late at night, solving puzzles and evolving from the scared young Amicia at the beginning of Innocence into the bloodthirsty hunter of Requiem. A feat that's reflected in your skills of the game. Amicia cannot compete with her enemies physically, but you can outsmart them, outplay them, set up a chain reaction of stealth kills, or just use the rats against them. And as much as people don't like them, I love the RPG angle that Assassin's Creed went into. Or well, I like it for Odyssey. Valhalla was kind of useless, but Odyssey was a fun mix of pace with slash and dash combat, fun boss fights, and a stealth game that kind of reminded me of Far Cry 4 at its best, and of course a neat story with interesting draws into the world of ancient Greece. There's this idea that repetition in a lot of these games makes them bad. It's not completely wrong, mind you, I think it's just misunderstood. A game like Valhalla or Fallout 4 are perfect examples of the same mindless nonsense for hours on end, but something like Ghost of Tsushima's warrior duels? You'd call them repetitive in the way that they're all similar fights, but all feature something new or unique. The only real repetitive nature of these games are collectibles, even worse when they offer nothing to the player and just serve as a checklist for an achievement run. Even Far Cry's nonsense towers, I kinda like. Little traversal puzzles breaking up each region and giving you combat bases or side quests to focus on, I don't mind it. Far Cry 4 was my favorite version of this. Little puzzle encounters that reveal the map bit by bit as you go along. In Tsushima, there's always something new, whether it be a change of scenery, the style of fighting used by the enemy, or even just the journey there. Climbing through the mountains, descending steep beachside cliffs, or even battling through a war zone before coming to the fight itself. A good game like God of War introduces new enemies, new mechanics for said enemies, and new ways to interact with puzzles and the world at large as you go on. Same goes for the best of all of these. Arkham, Mad Max, Jedi Survivor. It gives you the sense of growth and progression. Now for games that ignore this, those are the ones that feel stale. The most jarring example I've had of this was Spider-Man 2. Now, I didn't play the first Insomniac Spider-Man game until 2022 when I first got a PS5, so going from the first to the second, I was hit with a weird sense of nothing. Unlike God of War, where I was going from 2018 to Ragnarok almost back to back and was still being captivated by a strong narrative, new ideas and mechanics, even if the base layer was the same, Spider-Man 2 almost felt like it refused to do this. The gameplay loop was the same. The Mary Jane missions were still boring. The puzzles couldn't pass as a mobile game ad, being so bad that the game just asks if you want to skip them altogether. And then even 10 hours in, I had kind of given up on the game because it refused to do anything new or introduce anything of actual variety into the gameplay. I did give up on the game, but eventually came back to it after my 300-hour binge of Baldur's Gate 3 was done, and nothing really changed. The story with Venom was neat, but like Spider-Man 3 the movie, it feels like the attention is dragged all over the place, as if held down by Kraven hogging the first half of the game. Venom and Kraven are both cool, kinda. Kraven is supposed to be the ultimate hunter, but has lackeys doing 90% of the work for him until he shows up on a helicopter to shoot Peter with a rocket launcher. Venom having little minions bothered me too. I get it, it's a video game, but it really diminished the feeling of the first game's sense of grounding when Venom splurges all over New York just for it to be undone in about half an hour. In the opposite vein, it's also interesting to find a game that uses the tired tropes but puts a spin on it.
Me. Just, for illustrative purposes.
I've recently gotten into Horizon Forbidden West. I only have this game to begin with because it came with my PS5. The robo-dinos were always interesting, but never enough for me to actually get into it. But in the last month or so, as I've started to play it, damn, it takes me back. This game is stunningly gorgeous. Some of the characters genuinely look like real people, and the more I played, the more boxes it ticked off. Exploration in a varied and atmospheric world. Puzzles and side missions that actually get me involved and feel satisfying to complete. The combat is unique and fun. Hunting the machines and tracking them, picking out specific little bits to cut off and scrape by. Story missions that keep me guessing and don't feel so entirely predictable. Every time I think I have an anchoring for where the story is going, I'm thrown off track and brought into a new appreciation for the pacing of this game. The combat is satisfying, massive beasts that you whittle down and spend the whole fight dodging, the little rushes of, oh shit, I'm out of ammo, time to run for my life, because you can't take every fight head on, especially earlier on in the game. It forces you to get creative with the tools at your disposal. Traversal is not as constrictive as some of these other games, meaning at times I can get stuck on or can Skyrim mountain climb my way through obstacles, but it's flowing enough that it still feels natural. The only issue I have with this game that I can't decide whether I love for the sheer silliness or am annoyed by is Aloy's hair. Sometimes it's flawless, and other times it decides to find itself in the gravitational pull of Neptune and fly off everywhere before settling down. But otherwise, yeah, it's a solid open world with relatively inventive takes on a lot of tropes common in this kind of game, and one of the many recently that have reignited my love for these titles.
Maybe I should take one more look around before I go. See if there's anything else interesting.
And in the same line of thought, I don't think a game with a good story makes it an equally good game. I think The Last of Us is a great story and a fun game, once. I'd prefer to just rewatch the HBO show rather than load up the game anytime I feel like revisiting the story. Although in the same breath, it is still possible to have a game go beyond this reputation and focused almost entirely on story and get away with it. Senua's Saga is almost entirely story-driven, with little in the way of replayability, but so very worth it for the impactful playthrough you may find for yourself. An 8-hour long play with a good pair of headphones is the best way to play this game by far. All in all, I urge you to play a story game, whether it goes on for hours with incredible dripping depth like Baldur's Gate, or is a short yet sweet package that gets you involved in the world and characters like Arkham or Hellblade. Just try it. Because even in an age of Apex Legends, Fortnite, Overwatch, Destiny, and more, these impactful solo games are still amazing, and I found myself going back and simply replaying classic titles from Darksiders to Shadow of War to Gears of War to Spec Ops The Line to Bioshock to Wolfenstein to Brutal Legend, and they still don't disappoint. And more when I feel like every game is focused on making you pay $70 for the base game, $60 for a DLC, and $20 for a skin once a week with timed battle passes that require you to put in 40 hours a week on top of another $20 and just endless pits of money and nonsense forever? Or, Star Wars Outlaws with a with a special edition that is almost twice as much as the base game for a singular extra mission and some cosmetic details. A solid game that's all killer with little filler from beginning to end can often be found for $20 or less on sale almost year-round. It's a saving grace for me when it comes to gaming in 2024. And now that I can understand the games I played when I was 12, this might just be the best time to revisit all these classic 360 and PS3 gems in the dirt, or from the Xbox One era, or even just from a year or two ago. Rather than getting force-fed the shit that AAA games try to peddle our way, gaming is very depressingly focused on making you spend as much time as possible working towards nothing. And I get it. I love a lot of these multiplayer-focused games. New stuff like Helldivers makes me excited that newer games can be better, but for the most part, they're more focused with taking your money than giving us an experience in return. I don't think older games are better from an objective standpoint. My favorite games of all time, like God of War, Cyberpunk, and slowly Horizon, are all from the last few years. But as someone who struggles to keep an interest in modern multiplayer games the very limited amount of time between work, relationships, and everything else, I find the hours getting lost with a good action-adventure story game more enjoyable than any match of Overwatch, where sometimes I roll queue with friends just waiting for the match to be over. Not an issue I've ever had with a good story game. So yeah, big catalogs out there. I guarantee if you gave one of these games a chance, there's something for you. Want to feel like you're at the edge of your rope in a more grounded post-apocalypse? Metro is right there. Want to feel the pain and push of every attack? Senua's Saga is begging for you. Want to experience an interesting story that evolves and changes based on your choices over the course of a trilogy? Mass Effect, excluding Andromeda, is right there. Something that refuses to take itself seriously and focuses on nonsense above all. Just Cause 3 is the best action game I've probably ever played, with a massive sandbox just waiting for you to bring out some domestic terrorism on the fly. And as much as games can be wastes of time and feel just worse nowadays, there's also so many good games out there just waiting for you that I bet you've never even thought about or given a chance. If I can do anything, I would hope that you just try one of them. But that's it for me. Thank you very much for watching. Leave a comment down below about any games that you think are really good and should be experienced by more people. Honestly, I would love to see what you have if I haven't played it myself, because I will probably go to play it after this. But anyways, that's all for the video. Thank you very much for watching. Feel free to subscribe, like, leave a comment, as I said, or become a member for even more perks on the channel. Join the Discord down below, all that shit. And yeah, I think we're good. Is that a wrap? Remember to stay cool, have fun, and be awesome. Buster out.